open us up for our second meeting, our public meeting. Thank you, Patty.
I was just listening to the discourse between that side of the table and this one here about time. And I just want to bring us back to a sense of harmony in terms of the karakia. So although it speaks of the elements in the environment around us, which is what our duty is to do, I think the idea of this karakia when it was first composed was actually in the terms of a metaphor that should transcend down in terms of how people conduct themselves as well. So if you'd like to join with me, we're going to do the left side first. I'll set the tone and you set the volume. And we're going to do the English side straight after. Whakataka te hau ki te uru,
whakataka te hau ki te tonga,
kia mā kina tina kiuta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he hukara, he hauhu, ti hei moriora. Cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south. Let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharp air, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. And just to finish off, Chair, just two more statements. Can you say after me, Ahua Pai?
Ahua Pai.
It means not bad, fair to middling. Ahua Pai.
Ahua Pai.
And if you could just say this phrase here, Ka Rawe.
Ka Rawe.
Now if you just sit there and say it blandly with a face like as you have done, then it doesn't mean much. But if you say Ka Rawe,
Ka Rawe,
that means awesome. And might I add that for the karakia that you've just done, collectively, Ka Rawe.
Ka Rawe.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Apologies, who's going to leave early today?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock?
7.
I won't move the apologies. There's no apologies. Otherwise, everyone else is here, aren't they? Everyone's here. No apology. Move that we accept the apologies with those two.
Second.
Moved. I'll move. You second.
All right.
Those in favour, aye.
All right.
Notices. So I'll kick off with notices. So this is Councillor Bevan's, we'll come to you now in a second. Councillor Bevan's last day. Where is he? Where is he?
Right here.
He's right there. Oh, there. God, right in front of me. Last council meeting. So, Peter, we're going to let you have a little speech at the end, and I'm sure speeches from council, because you can't attend the our formal occasion that we're going to have in a couple of weeks. So we'll hold it to the end of the meeting. So on that note, I want to get that done by 4:15. Can we make that target, please? Because we're going to have people leaving.
3 o'clock.
You
get on with the job.
More.
Turn to your left, Mr. Chair.
Behind you, Rex.
Mr. Chairman, this, as you know, was presented to me on the inaugural train trip to Wairoa, I believe as chairman of the Transport Committee. But I would like to present it to you for the council. You own the trophy cabinet, because the exercise, the Napier Wairoa Rail exercise, was very much a team effort. Everyone played a part in that, but I'd like to specially mention yourself and James and Tom and Councillor Barker and Councillor Wilson for special attention.
Thanks, Alan. Really appreciate that. I'll leave it there so the public can see it. Thank you very much.
Very good.
And despite the fact that Alan is giving accolades to everybody else, we all in this room know that it would never have happened if he didn't push and bully us and keep on pushing and get rejected and come back, get rejected by Kiwi Rail, get rejected by us, get apathy from us, and push it along. And when I sat on that train with Rick, we said to ourselves, well, this is the most glorious trip, and it wouldn't have happened without Alan. So
Nick Cornwall deserves special attention as well.
Yeah, Nick was a great technician for you. Thanks, Alan. Right, are there any other notices? No other notices?
Chair, just a matter which has just come to my attention, just to advise the council, given it was an effort of local government to bring it here. Jetstar has just announced that they are withdrawing their services from Hawke's Bay.
Really?
And is stepping in to pick up the customers that will be affected by that.
Pick up the prices.
At great expense to the customers.
Thank you. Right, we're going to move to any conflict of interests. There will be none, I imagine. And Peter will have your notice motion in item 13. Confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting.
Happy to move.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Tom will second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We're moving along well. Staff council activities, item 5.
Minor items.
Oh, call for minor items not on the agenda. Do we have any? Tom?
Council carbon footprint.
Carbon footprint. Any others? None. So we move to significant council staff activities. No, you all read that. Anyone? We won't take. We'll take it as read. And any comment, please.
I move it be received.
Thank you very much. And mark some stuff.
Don't wish to speak?
We're going to have a mover to receive them. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder and Paul. That's got to be a first. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you for your busy, very busy month of activity.
Right.
Rick is determined. Item 6, Hawke's Bay Tourism. Quarterly report. Hamish is here. Hi, Hamish.
Chairman, Hamish is here. Mandy will talk to the report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Procedural point before we start.
Yes,
It's normal for these committees, I thought, to come to a committee before it came here.
it is.
Is this been to a committee?
Corporate strategic.
Sorry?
Corporate strategic, yeah.
No.
So it was originally provided to corporate and strategic, and there was some commentary about following up on the on amendments to the KPIs. As I understand it, Mr. Saxton hasn't been available until this point, and this was the last opportunity in the Triennium, given there's no more corporate and strategic committee meetings, to resolve the issue of the terms of the KPIs. And we did have set a level of service measure in the annual plan to have satisfactory KPIs in place by the 30th of June. So we're running behind those. So there is some urgency with respect to council resolving what had attempted to be resolved in June.
You happy with that answer?
Not particularly, but I'll accept it.
Thank you very much. Right, we can proceed, you guys. Mandy, you going to...
Okay, excellent. So assuming that the report has been read, so the review continues to take place at a time when there has been significant happenings, including the Productivity Commission's report into local government funding and financing, namely recommending that councils have a new funding tool for tourism, and that be an accommodation levy. Also, local government NZ has passed working on a remit that requires all accommodation providers to register with council. So there are two key developments in funding review. And Hamish, are you happy to talk to your... Yeah.
When we get to that.
Yeah.
Okay. And Hawke's Bay Tourism presents, following feedback from the previous time that we presented our KPIs, taking into account the feedback that we received from Council, we present the Board's ratified KPIs to Council.
You want to take questions? Questions, councillors?
Just on the report as a whole, Chair?
The entire report, yeah. Start with you, Neil.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I just want to go to both the general outlook and the position of Hawke's Bay tourism in the light of climate change, and to fully understand what major corrective strategic positioning Hawke's Bay tourism is likely to engage in. For example, moving away from long-haul international tourism, much more to domestic tourism, or even to focus on our nearest international market in Australia. So I'm really wanting to see what planning is going into alternatives to what has been a long-term strategy for Hawke's Bay tourism.
Thank you. As you'll be aware, we are actually commencing work on a visitor strategy and destination management plan due 30 June. So that will be covered in some of that. In addition to that, 80% at least of the visitor market that we have is currently from the domestic market, and our focus will be internationally upon Australia. From a long haul perspective, you won't be seeing any of the staff from Hawke's Bay Tourism travelling long haul to visit any markets. That is represented by the travel companies that we see in Auckland, the companies we know as inbound operators. Other than that, working with airlines and working with cruise companies and with other travel companies who obviously bring people to New Zealand, we hope that once people are in New Zealand that they will include Hawke's Bay in their travel itineraries. But Hawke's Bay alone won't be bringing people from overseas in most instances. That's not a market that we have the funds to go after.
Could I just follow up, Mr Chair, in terms of the domestic market and our various events that we hold, iconic events we have in the region, and is there any strategy to bring those visitors, domestic visitors, by alternative means than their own singular vehicle? In other words, promotion of bus or other forms of transport.
To answer that, we are at this stage, we simply have the ability to promote the destination, not necessarily the modes of transportation. So when we are able to go into market, and we're not, we're going into market broadly into Auckland, into Wellington, into the North Island, we're simply giving them reasons to come to Hawke's Bay.
Well, just one finally, if you don't mind, Mr Chair. So what strategies do you think will be worked on to reduce both the carbon footprint of Tourism Hawke's Bay internally, but more particularly the carbon footprint of the tourist market coming into Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, I'll revert to my earlier answer, whereby there is a destination management plan that is being worked on. In addition to that, we're paying very close attention to the tourism industry, Aotearoa's points regarding carbon and sustainability from an environmental perspective. There are a number of points there that we are aligning to, and that's also reflected in our KPIs that we are going to be encouraging our business operators to also align to the points within tourism industry, Aotearoa's work in that environment.
Thank you.
Paul and Alan.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Can you tell me in your report, Hamish, what work or where it describes what work has been undertaken this quarter with respect to encouraging members to pay the living wage?
Yep. So the comment around the living wage came up in the last meeting that we had, and the board had discussed including that actually as a KPI. We recognised that it was something that as an organisation we would encourage, but was not something that was actually within our control to have our members actually do, and therefore on that basis we have not included that as a KPI that the board is comfortable that we are actually able to control or have a significant power over.
Can I follow up question on that, Chair? You're aware that the motion that was passed in terms of that was hung on to the funding for Tourism Hawke's Bay was that you were to actively encourage your members to pay the living wage. What work has Tourism Hawke's Bay done to do that in this quarter?
At this stage, nothing from in this quarter.
So I'm disappointed with that. Another, Chair, more of a comment, Hamish. I attended the Hawke's Bay Tourism Awards and I have to express my disappointment that no acknowledgement was made of regional councils or the ratepayers funding the organisation through the regional council. You acknowledged that Tom and I were in attendance, but did not acknowledge the organisation or the fact that the ratepayers are funding the industry, and that I found disappointing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on the question of carbon and travel, it's my observation that Hawke's Bay today, 50% of their advertising currently, at least, would be for overseas tour destinations, cruise ships. The travel industry is dominantly pushing itself through that media. So, there's a bit of a task which might be one that's very difficult to achieve if you're trying to change habits and people's consumption requirements.
Any other questions? I have one, Hamish. Cruise ships taking a bit of flack internationally.
I'm not sure what you want me to change.
Great answer.
I'll put the motion in. Act of God, shall we say.
Oh, that's classic.
How important are cruise ships to our region?
Okay. Not sure what you want to tell me.
When we look at the spend, cruise ship is valued for this region at $28.4 million to the economy. So I think let's just talk about it in financial terms. It's that value to the economy. We're talking about 80 days roughly, which I think we could equate to the equivalent of 80 events that occur in this region. Now, obviously, there's a lot that appears to be seen in Napier City, but as we know, there are plenty of attractions and activities and beneficiaries further afield throughout the region, and we hope further spread. What's often not reported, of course, is that on many of the ships there tend to be one crew person to every 2 passengers. And many of those crew also like to get out and spend some time and spend some money. And they often spend their time and money as we residents would within our region, because you can be assured that they've got plenty of time to spend with the passengers on board the ship. So the desire to spend time with passengers in the destination is minimal to non-existent.
Thank you. Okay, Neil.
Just one, Mr. Chair, and it's to do with, Hamish, looking at the industry partnership membership and the result there where 73,000 was raised, which is something like 4% of total spend. What is behind the apathy by the sector in contributing to the promotional effort?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's something that I'm reviewing at the moment. You know, entry-level membership to Hawke's Bay Tourism is actually quite minimal. At a $200 membership plus $100 to take a listing on our website. For some businesses, that means that they could be investing $300 with us, or it could be more closer to $1,000, depending on how many listings they would like. If you're a small business and you take into account that it costs roughly $450 to be a member of the eyesight here in Napier, to be part of their cruise group with the eyesight, $700, to be part of our international marketing group at $500, for some small businesses, and many tourism businesses are, adding up, if they're going to join chambers of commerce and business associations, you could be looking at $3,000 or $4,000 overall. So I suspect that that's part of it. The second part, I think, is that some members are currently simply seeing a website as their membership, as opposed to all the other benefits of actually a marketing organisation for the region. And they need to be really reminded of that. So we're going to be changing some of our communications to remind our members. I guess like any other association, membership or investment in membership, there have to be benefits to be seen from that. So we're also going to have to not only just look at how we can deliver visitors and bookings to some of the people that are members, but you know, the greater good of what destination marketing and promotion does. I can tell you though, as an example, that we have just put a bid together for a conference to be held here next year, and have managed to raise an indication, because we haven't landed the conference, but if we do, we would have had the equivalent of roughly $35,000 worth of support from the industry. So it's that type of thing that we will be making sure that we measure appropriately and count. But we need to be communicating those to our members and those who aren't our members.
Any more questions, Tom?
If I could just add to that point, there was, the board members, of course, look at the 73 as well and question that, and often the retort has been along the lines of what Hamish just said. Well, here's an example of 35,000 being put up for a particular purpose, a particular marketing objective, and what Hamish has been asked to do is to come up with a more concrete, specific template, if you will, for reporting that kind of money. Because it kind of, in the past, I think it washes over us. We hear the assertion that, oh, but you know, there's $400,000 of this or that, and some of that is contributing what would otherwise be empty beds, and you know, so people feel a little squishy about that. And so, if it is going to have credibility as evidence of the fuller contribution of the industry, the board has said we need to be more precise about that. And report it on a regular basis in some kind of a template form that people can look at and decide whether it's real or not, and whether the credit is deserved or not.
Move the report be. Thank you, Rick. Second up. Fenton, do you wish to speak, Rick? Fenton, do you wish to speak?
Oh, very briefly, Chair, just thank you for going away and doing this extra bit of work, and look forward to the package, I think you said June next year, which will probably, well, I would expect to allay some of the fears and challenges put to you at this meeting, so thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Hamish. I look forward to, in your next quarterly report, getting an update on where we are with the work that you've been doing to encourage members to take up the living wage.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pause. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Thanks, Hamish. Thanks, Mandy. Very much. So we have item 7, which is a report from the regional planning. And of course, it doesn't include the meeting we just had.
I have the recommendation. I'll second that.
Okay. Do you wish to speak, Alan?
No.
Rick? Anyone else wish to speak? No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to
No, I don't think we do. That's from this morning.
Sorry, what's
tell me
that?
the terms of reference?
The discussions, Leanne saying, do we deal with the issues that we had this morning?
No.
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
On the 9th.
Yeah.
You need to give 5 days' notice.
Chair, just a point of clarification, just so the council's absolutely clear. Recommendation 3 in the item that's just been agreed to by council, adopted plan change 9. It says for notification. just to be clear that that's not a decision to notify, it's adopted for the purposes of notification,
That's right.
but it's not a decision to notify.
That's right.
Got that?
Pretty clear about that.
Clear about that?
Yeah, no, no,
Transport Committee.
there's no ambiguity
Welcome up.
about it. Like the New Zealand frigate.
Right,
Fitted
we have the
forward
report on the recommendations from the Regional Transport Committee. You've all read the report.
Yes.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, there's a couple of recommendations in there, isn't there?
Very detailed report.
It was very good.
Full reports.
Yeah. I did have one, Chair.
A question, yeah? Well, you've got Anne up here, so away you go.
Sorry. Paragraph number 54, this is under option 3.3, free two-zone peak services, making all current peak zone to result in losses of approximately 182,000 revenue, so on and so on. Is that not assuming any increase in patronage?
Yes, it's assuming increase in patronage, but because the trips are free,
Yeah.
there would be no increase in revenue, so we would lose all the current two-zone peak revenue if we went for that option.
But you'd still have the subsidy from the, is that a per passenger or is that?
No, that's on our net cost after fares are taken off.
Yep, okay, that explains that.
Mr. Chairman, I see this as a template for the next council
Yeah.
to do some deliberate work on, but there are some good and innovative ideas in there. It is going to cost something, but I believe that there will be a return both in terms of building passengers and reducing carbon output.
Are there any other questions for either Alan or Anne?
I'm happy to move the recommendations 1 through to 4.
You have a seconder? Second? Wish to speak?
I would just add one thing, that this is a historic moment because this is the last Transport Committee report we'll receive with Alan as the chair. I just want to acknowledge, as we will do later, the sterling work he's done on this and put on the record. Outstanding work. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Yep, I think we all endorse that.
I would just note, I've said it before, that, okay, we've had some challenges in the last couple of years or so, and they're explainable and understandable, but we're still carrying 50% more passengers than, 12 years ago? 9 years ago?
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Okay, we're going to move in a second. You want to speak, Ken?
Just briefly, just looking at 4.3 NZTA Central Region, the Regional Relationships Director's Report, September 2019, it was pretty heartening in that report to see that the Waikari Gorge project is getting a bit of traction, including potential funding, and they've certainly started some of the geotech work and the negotiation with landowners. So he's hoping in the next few years, it'll take longer than 12 months obviously, but he's hoping in the next few years that we do get a chance to open up that road north.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to thank you for the work that's been put into this, these options on the fares. I think it's really well set out and explains it, all the thought that's gone on behind what you're looking at, and I'm looking forward to the recommendations that may be coming towards to this committee next triennium. You know, looks good. There's some good stuff in there. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. Item 9, report and recommendations to the Corporate and Strategic Committee. Neil, do you want to speak to these?
Just very briefly, Mr. Chair, just to refresh councillors' memories on this. The major issue was the annual report update, which described some issues to do with the audit opinion, and I think we traversed that substantially with with the auditor, Mr. Lucy. We'd introduced the non-financial measures, and I think there was a strong consensus that they were hitting the mark, and we're well on our way to a meaningful set of performance measures. So well done to the staff for completing it, which was quite an arduous exercise around that. But other than that, Mr. Chair, the committee considered that penalty on rates policy, etc., risk management, assessment and management, but pretty standard report from the committee.
Thank you, Neil. Jessica, do you want to add anything to that? Nothing to add?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Okay. Questions?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Just a very brief question through you to Jessica. Remission on penalties and rates. I noticed that the letter's gone out with the latest rates demand.
Great timing.
Sorry about that.
With a big grin on her face. You look sorry.
I am sorry.
There was a fair amount of commentary on social media about receiving the change in payment date. Can you just give me any feedback on how it's been received actually here in the building with respect to the rates team?
Sure. So feedback from the rates team is that actually the volume of calls doesn't seem to be any higher than normal in terms of queries, but the average time that they're taking to talk to somebody on a call is taking a little longer. So they're explaining both the increase in rates and the changing of the dates for the next financial year as well. So about the same volume, but it's taking a little longer to talk people through the changes, but we haven't had a huge amount of dissatisfaction at the conclusion of the call, so I think the team's doing a good job explaining the rationale for the change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move, Mr. Chair.
We have a mover. Neil will move.
Sorry.
I'll second it.
Sorry, I think.
Oh, Debbie, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
I have 3 points. With the notice that went out to say that the rates were going on to, you had your option A or B. It would have been really helpful if you had known actually what the amount was, because 2 days later the amount came in another envelope, but I kind of looked at it and thought, actually I don't recall off the top of my head what our rates are, so it just got parked as to whether you wanted to go on 12 months. Oh, on the direct debit statement? Yeah. So how meaningful those comms have been to most people if they don't know off the top of their head what the rates are anyway.
Quite a huge response of people moving on to direct debit, so
you might, it might.
But I'll take on board the feedback. Thank you.
I wanted to just mention social media as a use of comms, and we didn't have the opportunity to prep for Drew's presentation, but just to reinforce that the social media in terms of communicating to the rural farmers particularly is not working in terms of Plan Change 6 implementation, and I'd strongly suggest that you do look to using the Central Hawke's Bay Mail far more, as I keep saying, but make sure it's on record. And the other thing I did want to acknowledge, which was done in the meeting, was the final annual report from Viv, and just once again say how much I've very much enjoyed working with him.
Thank you, Debbie. Any other questions? We had a mover, didn't we? A mover, and we had a seconder.
Yep.
Seconder, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll waive my right to speak, Mr. Chair.
Oh, good.
Well, you had a speech when you started. I was about to give you an extension of time for that.
Do you want to speak?
No, I don't.
Okay. We will move to item 10, Appointments, Remuneration, Directors Policy. James, what's all... Jessica, you're going to talk this, are you?
So this is really one of the final sort of wrap-up steps from the Nature Port transaction. The introduction of Nature Port Holdings as a CCO requires us to update the policy in terms of the appointment and rem of directors to our council organisations. So the policy is attached in a separate document, the marked up copy of the policy. So Bell Gully have provided the policy updated to incorporate Napier Port Holdings, and Blair and I have also reviewed and provided some feedback on the policy. Really just a matter of process, but happy to take any feedback on the policy itself.
It is a matter of process. Peter?
Yeah, I'm happy in general terms with this, Jess. Just a couple of technical things. Firstly, number 52 as a general principle, the council would seek an appointment to appoint a person who will, while meeting all of the above criteria, has particular strengths in terms of attribute 50.7, should be 51.7.
Okay, thank you.
52. So a different paper for me.
And there's another one somewhere.
Lost me.
What page you on?
Yeah, lost me too.
In the marked up version.
It's in the it's in a separate document.
Oh, separate
on a
document?
separate cover.
That's right.
Okay, so 89, each director appointed by shareholders, as noted in paragraph 84.2 of this policy, there is no 84.2.
Oh. He was outstanding work, Peter.
Only a lawyer would pick this
And
up.
it goes on to talk about re-election no later than the third annual shareholder meeting. So it's actually, it's not clear whether it needs to be an annual or a 3-yearly election, and it's quite important that it's clear.
By the annual or triennium?
So I think we need to clarify that before we can actually.
Right, okay, I think it's 3 yearly.
Yeah, should be.
Do we have any advance on 3? Can we make it 4?
And actually,
And you proposing yourself as chair.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the mark.
So how do we handle that? Do we just,
So we can adopt it subject to these amendments.
are you happy to do that, Peter?
Yeah.
Adopt subject to those amendments?
I'll second that.
Oh, hang on.
You
hang
want a
on.
question?
Yes, sorry, there is one more, and it's 92, which is the chairperson of Napier Port.
Oh, yeah.
And it says that in the second part of that, Napier Port Board may discuss the appointment of its chairperson with the governance appointment and remuneration committee of HBRIC. HBRIC currently doesn't have one of those. So I'm thinking that you need to add some additional words saying that it could be the full board of HBRIC as opposed to just that.
I think it should
Either
be
or.
break. I don't think it should be HBRIC.
It should just be, yeah, that makes it easy. Yeah.
HBRIC, and they can determine if they will have a subcommittee or not.
Thank you.
That's how it was originally.
Yep, that's correct, it was, right. Yeah.
Paul?
Just a number of questions actually. 2.5, but I'm not looking at the marked up copy, right? I'm looking at the full version. I understood, I mean, you've got reorganisations of subsidiaries of HBRIC or companies directly owned by HBRC, so that's companies directly owned by us. Then HBRIC will act as the interface and monitoring body. Why, if we are the sole owners, are they reporting to HBRIC and not directly to us?
Because they're a subsidiary of HBRIC?
No, they're not.
No, what he's pointing out is that the way this was written, there are things that we own directly ourselves, but you're requiring them to report to HBRIC.
so if we dropped out the all companies directly owned by us,
Yeah, you would have to
where
drop-
organisations are subsidiaries, then HBRIC will act as.
Absolutely, yep, that's all right.
So does that include, for example, the works group, if we were to...
Yeah, they report directly
Part
to
of the
us.
organisation, they're not a CCO.
They're not a CCO.
They're actually part of the HBRC.
Sure, but if we chose to promote them in that area, would that then bind them to HBRIC as opposed to council?
Not within.
No,
not-
not necessarily. We
Depends
have
on
them
how
as
we
a
set them
direct-
up. We
What
could,
we want to
but
do.
then we might not.
Then they would require their own policy as
Yes.
opposed to falling under this one.
Right, 10.2, and this goes through the document, right through the document a fair bit that I could see. It's you refer to Napier Port Holdings Limited, and then you refer to under Napier Port Constitution. Is it? Oh, I see you've got that in brackets.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that part, so it's fine.
Need to turn the light on when you read this to
Yeah, absolutely.
Reading in the dark's not helping you.
And again, 16, it monitors the performance of all CCTOs, whether owned directly by HBRIC or the council. It's that same
Same thing.
Same issue.
Crop it out.
Yep. Same.
And I think that was 81. In the event of a council or HBRIC staff member being appointed to a CCTO, the fees appointee shall not be paid or be paid to the council and HBRIC Limited unless there are special circumstances. Can you just give me some idea what special circumstances might mean?
Sorry, Paul, can you just let me know what number?
81.
81.
Does that answer, this reflects the employee being appointed as part of the existing position? Is that the special?
As I understand what it's trying to say is if you go on the board of Acebrook, you don't get fees, either as a council or council employee. But it's leaving a back door that might be an exception where you might want to because of special circumstances. What's special is, I don't think anybody knows, but it has to be the exception.
I think one of the things you could imagine is if there is some inordinate piece of work that required an additional time commitment above and beyond the ordinary, where you might want to make a case for some kind of payment.
That's all right. That explains
No, it could be.
No, that's exactly right. So the norm is that no fees are paid. Yep. But there might be an exceptional situation turns up where you might deem that there to be by decision whether it should be a fee.
Always a first mover.
That's all right. Well, it's always been. And that was it. I'm happy to move, Chair.
Move up. Paul, will you second?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Second. Just to speak, either of you? The process, but I'm really impressed that Peter and Paul picked up those little indiscretions there.
Oh, there was 4-all.
4-all, yeah. All those in favour? All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. Oh yeah, this is a really big one. We're delegating all of our money and balance sheet to the Chief Executive.
I'll move.
The power to make a rate. I thought that was pretty special.
Yeah, that was special.
That really worries me.
They're excluded.
Yes.
Yeah, except, yeah. So we're going to move it. Do we have a second?
Reading in the dark again.
Second, do I straight to it? I think it's
been a long week.
That's the process. So, do you have to speak, Debbie? Fenton?
I think it's...
Anyone else wish to speak on this? Just for you keeping a close eye on them with you, Jessica, during this process. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. Fixing the common seal.
Move. Seconded.
Aye.
It's moved. Second. All those in favour? Aye. 12 moved. Number 13, that's Peter. Actually, it's not Peter.
It's you.
It's you, sorry.
It's you that's it.
If you'd like, we can take Peter's.
No, I need to take Peter's now because it's a decision item. So, yeah, he goes in there. Okay, Peter. Okay. We're taking you now, the late item.
Right, thank you, Chair.
Floor is yours.
Why aren't we doing item 13?
Because I've decided to do this.
And Chair, if I could indulge...
It's a decision item.
It's a decision item, so it's the last of the decision item.
See, there's a line there.
This will need a seconder, but James has put two options here, 2-1 or 2-2. Could you just elaborate on the distinction between the two, James, and then I'll select one and ask for a seconder.
The distinction is essentially because the motion as drafted by Councillor Bevan is fairly directive into what I think we would normally consider to be an operational matter that would normally sit with the Chief Executive in terms of the flow of the business of advice within the organisation, the role of particular staff members in receiving and managing that advice. So certainly I understand the intention from the notice of motion of the motion. It was getting, I think it's actually over the line, to be frank, in terms of its directiveness around operational matters, and so 2.2 is there as an alternative which requests that I undertake a process to identify an optimal way of ensuring that, I guess, the sentiment which is expressed in the original notice of motion can be achieved. So,
you happy with it, Peter?
Yeah. So either of these alternatives achieves what I'm trying.
Well, the first one's over the line, he suggests.
Yeah. So I'm happy on that basis to take 2.2 and seek a seconder.
I'll second it.
With a seconder? Right, the floor is yours. Any questions on this before we give Peter the floor? Paul, got any questions?
No, wait, I'll speak to it.
You'll speak to it, okay. Right, Peter, the floor is yours to speak.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I guess there are some here that might say that this resolution is intended to clip the wings of the tangata whenua members of the Regional Planning Committee, or you might even suggest that I'm exiting the room and rolling in a hand grenade on my way out the door, but that's not the case at all.
That's a very good analogy.
In fact, the opposite's actually true. Like many people sitting around this table, I've thought long and hard about what's going to make the regional planning committees work much more effectively as a committee of this council than it has up until now. And we saw yet another example today of the difficulty we have in everybody sitting at the table and understanding each other's views and taking things forward. In my opinion, the most important single thing that we can do to get better information flow and discussion amongst all of the members of the RPC is to use our own HPRC resources and support mechanisms to ensure that all members have access to the same advice and the same information and the opportunity to discuss it with each other, whether that's from formal or informal meetings. So we have to come up with a constructive way to address what is currently happening. Information and reports being discussed amongst one half of the committee, resulting in recommendations being presented to the other half of the committee on the evening before meetings or even on the morning of RPC meetings, so that no one has had the opportunity to discuss or shape these things or hear what others think. And from a governance perspective, that's a real problem. So I find it hugely ironic that the tangata whenua members of the RPC committee must meet separately and discuss how policies and plans will impact on tangata whenua values, beliefs and culture, yet it is we councillors, in my view, that actually need to hear and understand these things much better, and we're deprived of that information and the opportunity to do that. So that's what this resolution is really intended to try and achieve. Since July last year, the HPRC has spent pretty close to $100,000 on independent advice to support the Regional Planning Committee. This funding could easily have been used to bolster Perry's team and make it more effective in supporting the work and the information that members of the RPC are seeking. There will be times that getting independent advice is the right thing to do, and there'll be other times when the advice can be sourced internally and provided from our own resources. And I believe that either Perry's office or other offices within the Regional Council are perfectly capable of making those selections and ensuring that all of that information is available to all members of that committee. And that is the simple intent of this resolution.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Mr. Chairman, could just hear from Mike Mahi. Mr. Mahi, give us a view on this, please.
Who was the second to speak, Tom?
Did you move it?
Do you want to second it? Okay, Mike, the floor's yours, mate.
No, I endorse the sentiment of this. However, sometimes we sort of want to hear just talk amongst ourselves and have a grizzle about you lot. But I mean to say what Peter's talking about is the substantive recommendations from so-called independent advisors. And perhaps that's not always, how should I put this, as straight as it should be. So, I would endorse this so everybody's on the same page.
Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair, the parts of this recommendation which certainly have attracted my attention is the opportunity to really strengthen Te Pou Whakaari. I think it's really important that we acknowledge that this council has invested substantially in it. We've certainly got the right people in the right place, and I'd be very much in favour of increasing its capacity if that's where we're heading with this. But particularly the words in that commissioning and funding that independent advice. It's my sincere concern that that some of the advice coming to the RPC has a tenor much more akin to political activism as opposed to fair and reasonable public sector advice. And if we can turn that around so we've got impartial, specialist, considered advice coming through, I think that will go some way to increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of the RPC. So I'm very much in support of the Chief Executive considering this with a fresh slate for the new emerging council, so that they don't experience similar consequences as we've seen in the last term.
Okay, Rick, then Paul.
I want to follow up on the theme by Councillor Dick and ask Peary what his views are on the recommendation, please.
Having read through the paper, I agree with the recommendation, the endorsements that are in there. I think it should be an open, transparent and timely process, as is indicated, and I'm not quite convinced that that is the case now.
Excellent, thank you.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I was of two minds when I read the paper, and I thank you for your words, Peary and Mike. That's a great assistance to me. But I also think that this is just one of the solutions. I think what we really need to look at what's happened around the whole tank process from the beginning. I understand that internal staff review's been undertaken, and I have no idea what the outcome from that is. But I think as a council we need to take a really bottom up look at what we can do to improve the relationship we have with our RPC members. I mean this could be one part of it, but I think we need to look at the whole thing and have a really good discussion about it and make some decisions that we may have to change the way we look at doing things. I don't know what that could look like, but I think as a council we need to grab that by the balls and have a go at it, because what's going on so far is just not working.
Thank you, Paul. Any other speakers? Peter, do you want to wind us up?
Oh, there's not much to add, really, Chair. You can feel that, you can sense the frustration of everybody sitting around this table and their desire to make the RPC work much better and more effectively than it currently is. And there will always be informal meetings, and this is not intended to discourage those meetings from taking place at all. I'd like to think that when there's informal meetings, there can be a much wider representation at those meetings. That's one of the outcomes I'd love to see.
Okay, we'll move in a second. Just remember it's 2.2, it's not 2.1. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Item 13 now, Chair.
Yep. 13, report from the Civil Defence.
This is you, is it?
I was in attendance, but I don't think it's me. It's Ian or Leanne.
So, look, Ian's not here. I'm happy to speak to a Chair. Just a couple of things perhaps to bring to Council's attention. The first of which is the capability assessment report, and this did get brief mention when we were looking at the annual report performance measures. Councillors might recall that we set ourselves the reasonably ambitious target of hitting an 80% mark in the capability assessment. In the event we came in at 72. 72 is up from about 50, around 50% performance 5 years ago. And it was about 60% about 3 years ago or thereabouts. So we've been tracking well, and while we're not at the 80% mark yet, it is fair to say that Hawke's Bay's capability in civil defence has come an awful long way, and I want to pay tribute to Ian MacDonald in particular and his leadership during his time. Hawke's Bay is now regarded, as we're told by the Ministry of Civil Defence, as one of the leading regions in New Zealand with respect to its capability and preparedness. We do know that we've still got lots of work to do, particularly with our community, but we're making good progress in that regard. And so I think having shifted to a whole of region rate now, and this council being responsible for raising all of the funding for the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Group, you can be heartened to know that money is being invested well on behalf of the community, and we're building good capability. The other thing that I just draw to your attention is in the annual and financial report, there was an underspend for the year of approximately $300,000. The principal reason for that was that we managed to leverage significant national funding in the last 12 months for civil defence activity for a number of projects, and effectively what that meant is that staff were able to charge time to those national projects because they were working on those national projects. And we didn't therefore incur directly out of the budget. The $300,000 that was underspent has been recommended by the Joint Committee for putting into the Regional Disaster Reserve. So it's money that's effectively squirreled away for an event when that happens, and actually continuing to bolster that through a little bit of an underspend each year in civil defence is no bad thing. They're the only two matters, Chair, that I was anxious to raise.
I'm happy to move the report, Chair.
Just a question, Chair.
Yeah.
On page 74, talks about this mysterious new CDEM facility building, which I read about in the paper. It says there is an opportunity for council to see this new facility on the 6th of September, and I just urge the Chief Executive to put a little note in his diary to take the new council to see this mysterious new building that we took the heat over the big rate increase for, but we haven't seen it. So expressing a modicum of disappointment.
Yes, that has been relayed to the Hastings District Council, who ran the event, and look, both Ian and I are feeling remiss for the fact that we did not inquire with the Hastings District Council as to who was on the invite list. We received invites as did Rex and turned up to the event.
I'm not that precious.
But we'll certainly bring councillors there, and I know that Ian would be delighted to show anybody through when they're passing by. But just a reminder that it is a Hastings District Council owned facility, and we are tenants in it, and we're not the sole tenants either. We rent part of the building, as do our police, and Hastings District Council have some of their functions in there as well.
I'm having a second.
I just want to comment on your comment, Vin, because it's actually really accurate. I haven't been around as long as you, but I have noticed that in the occasion with tourism, Hawke's Bay, we work really hard and take a lot of flack getting the levy for them, and they never thank us or acknowledge us. And it's exactly the same with civil defence. We really pushed hard to take a regional view, and as you know, it wasn't that easy. And it seems that when we do it, regional council does these things, everyone just takes it and moves on, and you can tire of it, but it's just the way it is, seems to be. Are there any other, I just want to comment a little about civil defence. We all meet and regularly, and you know that's because we have to statutory, and a lot of the ground is covered, but I must say that most people are pretty attentive at our meetings, because I think everyone here knows that we're at the front line of this. If there's a big tsunami or earthquake out here, we're definitely at the front line, and so we all take it pretty seriously. And that building is a pretty amazing building, which we need to get everyone to go and have a look. Okay, we're to move in a second, do we?
I offered to move before, but
I interrupted you.
We've now had 3 speeches, so I don't know what they are.
Happy to second, Chair.
Rick and Fenton. No, yeah, we're going to move. We're in speech time. Do you want to fight the final speech, Rick?
I haven't spoken to my resolution yet, but there's been 3 speakers before me. But anyway, just an observation, Chair.
Having a shock.
I want to just come back to the observation that I was not, whilst the numbers of people saying that they're prepared for civil defence emergency is down, I am not unduly fazed by this. People do get prepared when there are substantial emergencies around the world, and they react to them. And if you reflect on the last few years, it has been relatively calm. We haven't had a Boxing Day tsunami and other sorts of major events. So I just think that it's an ebb and flow thing. And to James, I just say that in civil offence, there's no end state. You're always constantly comparing. I would touch on the issue that Fenton raised and Rex has raised about the new facility. There's no question that it would not have been built had we not signed up to be the tenants. We're effectively funding that. It's a little bit like a lot of other things would never be built without the tenants. We agreed to the tenancy, so the place is built. So I thought we were slighted in that regard, and we've taken responsibility for the management of it. For the region again, but I just thought it was a very unfortunate piece of poor personal relationship management. Having said that, I feel quite comfortable. I think the team we've got here are doing a fine job, and there's no cause for concern.
Thank you. So we are moving to sector. All those in favour of receiving the reports? Aye. Against? It is carried. So number 14 is the Tongoyo Coastal Hazard Strategy update on the meeting. Chris, are you going to? Oh, he's already at the stage.
Okay, so quick update on the joint committee. So first, apologies for the format. Following that up, I think a PDF must have gone into the pack, so it hasn't come out particularly clear. Look, it was a very brief meeting. There was two parts. There was the formal meeting and then a workshop. The workshop was really a discussion around the 3 workshops with each of the councils. And so we can maybe talk a bit about that if you like. In terms of the formal meeting, it really just went through the supplementary recommendations. So they were a bunch of supplementary recommendations to the published report for each of the cells and the pathways. There's a bunch of things in there. Some examples would be a request to align standards between Napier City and Hastings, so elements of the district plans and building codes. Other things like maintaining the recreational value of West Shore Beach, etc. So really reinforcing some of the work we're doing there. Reinforcing some concerns around the environmental effects of some of those pathways. Asking us to do a bit more work around a managed retreat model. And also asking us to look at easing consenting processes for groups of residents like the H21. There's a whole raft more, but there's a few examples. So but those were effectively closed out with a number of letters going off to the chief executives of some of those organisations. Did you want to, Peter, talk about or did you want to discuss here any of the outcomes from the workshop?
Well, I think it's probably more of interest actually to my fellow councillors to talk about both the 3 workshops we held individually with the councils and the workshop we held with the joint committee subsequently. I think that's probably. So I'm happy to give a sort of a.
Yeah, I can lead it off and. Yeah. So effectively, look, one of the challenges is every organisation has a slightly different view on how a contributory fund.
Slightly, that's a very nice way to put it.
Should operate. I guess the heartening factor is there is an overwhelming view that there should be a contributory fund. So I think everyone's aiming in the right direction. It's really how we get there. And the views are quite different, and I guess the funding team and the TAG group particularly recognise we probably do need to do a lot more work with each of the councils going forward, and probably more in the decision-making arena than the technical aspects of a contributory fund. So I think we're looking to put a big effort in the new Triennium to hopefully get this over the line. We're always talking to residents, the Cape Corner and more recently at Wharenaki, where residents are looking for assistance from the councils. But until we resolve this funding question and the contributory fund, there really is, no money in the pot to deal with some of these issues. So Peter, maybe you can go into some more detail on different views of each organisation.
So just two or three other issues that came up during the various workshops. One was, should the work of the Joint Hazards Committee be extended to climate change response more generally? And that probably got support around this table, but it got very little support with either the Hastings or Napier councillors. They felt that at the stage of advancement we are with the coastal hazards work, that needed to continue to be the focus. And they probably saw the climate change response stuff being more the responsibility of this council rather than the other ones. So I don't think there's really any support at all for widening the scope of the work that it's currently doing. That's the first thing. Second thing, you'll recall that we had discussions around each of the three councils putting up $15 annually into a contributory fund. So there was, as Chris has said, there was general agreement around the notion of the contributory fund. Everyone supported that, but there was not widespread support amongst all three councils for putting up the $15. However, what there was discussion around was that it's probably going to be, who knows, 5 years plus before we actually start to do the work on the coast itself, whether it's building a seawall or whether it's, building groins at Hamawat or whatever it's going to be. And there's some interim funding that's going to be required probably at a higher level than we're currently each contributing. And there was, I think, recognition amongst the three councils that we should be continuing to jointly fund and equally fund whatever that interim work needs to be, and some of it will actually be work on the coast itself as opposed to just supporting the work of the Joint Committee or doing consenting work, for instance. So I think that that's something that we can definitely pick up with the two other councils. There wasn't consensus around what a future funding model should look like, and that's definitely going to be a work in progress that we're going to have to continue to scope out with our TLAs. And I guess the other thing that came through loud and clear at the Joint Committee workshop is that there's still a lot more work needs to be done to educate the councillors from all three councils. And there was pretty strong support for holding a meeting of the councillors of all three councils after the election so that we can actually do a briefing of all councillors, in particular the ones that are going to be incoming and won't be familiar with the history of this and what's been going on, and that's the opportunity to try and get all three councils much closer to the same page that they currently are. So I don't know whether Tom or Paul, do you want to make, or Neil, do you want to make any further comments about the joint, because you were all three there?
Yes, well, I'd certainly I do want to comment. Some of the concerns I've got are around the expectations of the other councils, both staff and councillors on the committee, and I think this council, the new council, needs to come to a position in regard to where it would likely land around issues such as the hard engineering solution or managed retreat. So they are big picture issues that need to be discussed, because it's my observation, one, that the Regional Council is expected to pay. That's still a very high expectation around the table. Two, and I was disappointed around the modelling that was done for the Clifton end of things, which was all about hard engineering. What was that total bill of about 100 million?
Significant.
On that. So we've modelled hard engineering options, and there wasn't a parallel managed retreat option also put up at the same time. Now, also concerning though was the expectations that has now set that that is the solution, and I'm really quite concerned that those expectations are out there, and I don't know. I suspect around those, if you like, modelling planning processes, there is a high expectation of staff from the respective councils, the TAs I'm talking about, that those are the solutions and we are going to promote those, and had heard some quite off-camera conversations around that with staff who were vigorously opposing any notion of managed retreat. And I thought, well, gosh, you know, we'll end up having spent vast sums of money on models. We've come up with a solution what essentially may appear to be a fait accompli, when this council, in my view, is likely to have a very substantially different view of that, particularly in the Tongoy, the Clifton end of things. So that would be my caution, is that fires are dampened down early, so those expectations are not seen to be in train.
So if I could just make one other comment, which is an expansion of what Neil was just saying, and that's the whole business of the cost of getting shingle, whether it's for replenishment or whether it's for backfilling groins or whatever to the coast. That's a significant cost, and and how big it cost it is really dependent upon where the source of the shingle is. So if you're going to bring the shingle from Central Hawke's Bay to here, and you've got to bring, I don't know, 10,000 truckloads or something, there's a huge cost to doing it, and it's going to be an annual cost probably. So the source of the shingle's got a significant impact on what all this looks like, and it sort of brings more into focus the notion of managed retreat. But any consultation has to cost all of the options and put them on the table for public discussion. So I think we're going to get to have that discussion anyway.
Thank you, correct.
I'll move the report be received.
Do you want to second up?
Happy to second, Chair.
Good to speak.
I think we had very good introductory comments from Councillor Bevan and Curtin, and I want to say I'm very impressed that they're all over the top of the subject, and I wish they would continue with it.
It's just, when I read the paper, I made a note here with Councillor Bevan vacating the chair. We're going to have to give some thoughts into how we find a suitable replacement.
You have some ideas on that, Tom?
I think Peter sugar-coated the issues a bit in his presentation. I think where we are is sort of like where we were on Tank a year and a half ago. We put a hell of a lot of effort, a lot of people at the community level dove into the issues, tons of work done, lots of analysis and so forth. And then you eventually get to a point where you start talking about money and
burn runs for the hills.
And you just, the last meeting effectively kicked the whole issue to touch. It basically said, look, these councils are going to roll over. A number of them, including our own, could have, quite a few changes in the deck chairs, and no point in pushing the issue any further at the moment. We're just going to have to get a new set of cards dealt and kind of, in a way, start over in the sense that Neil's raising, that the acceleration of impact and so forth that we're looking at might override a lot of the initial assumptions that were behind the recommendations that were tabled and developed and explored with the grassroots level. So we could be in the managed retreat business a lot sooner than the current plans talked about, and nobody wants to consider that really. Nobody's really, and God forbid that you talk about climate change in any broader context.
Yeah.
There's even less consensus about that.
Mike.
Yeah.
Answer all, Tom.
Yeah, just endorse what Peter's saying about the new councillors being aware of it, because the general public is the emails I read from Councillor Bevan, Tom, yesterday. My family's at Ocean Beach, Jiawonga, Homewater, and when I get on the bandwagon that Tom gets on, they just said, you're just going, we knew you'd lose it in the end.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Should we just receive this report? Move it?
Yeah, moved it.
Move it. Peter, you'll second it?
Somebody seconded it.
Seconded by Paul.
Oh, Paul seconded it. And you've spoken. Do you want to speak again?
Just one last quick thing. Got to say either about trying to have hard options. I thought the public of Hawke's Bay has been shown a very clear example of what to expect by whoever, where they've decided that they're selling and retreating hard and fast. That a clear message to anybody? You're not looking.
It was, yeah. Well said. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's passed. So we'll go 15, drinking water, just a report on that meeting. Who's doing that? Liz, not here.
I'm happy to move the report.
Straightforward, Chair.
That would be good.
Okay, we've got a mover of the report and we've got a seconder. Do you wish to speak? Anyone wish to speak?
Yep.
Yes. Paul and then Tom.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, Chair. One is Jim Graham's talk created a lot of scuttlebug here in Napier. Of course, with chlorine being a big issue at the moment, and I think we need to be careful that the Joint Drinking Water Committee or the Joint Drinking Water Governance Joint Committee could look at putting some alternative points of view in rather than just Jim's, which is fine. I mean, I found his presentation really good in terms of it set out what had happened in the Netherlands and Denmark very well, I thought. And the other one was the Regional 3 Waters update and the status of that particular review that's been undertaken here locally. I'm sort of getting the sense, I'm not getting a really good sense of what's actually going on with that review, and would like some further detail on that at some stage, because it seems like it's going in a direction which I'm not entirely sure is one which I'd be comfortable with around to have to make a decision with around this table. Just a bit of an oversight thing more than anything.
Paul,
Do you want to comment on that now?
No, that's all right. You can do it offline if you want.
Okay, you can have a rest. Tom?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the Jim Graham presentation. This fellow went overseas and looked at a number of places and came back and said the most apt example to look at for us here would be Denmark. And the reason it's a land area the same size as Hawke's Bay, but it has 6.5 million people on it. And the net of it, you could come away, either side of the issue could come away, I think, hearing what they wanted to hear. On the one hand, he said, here is a situation where you have 6+ million people living without, they've never used chlorine, but the ingredients of being in that situation were, a vastly, a huge investment in infrastructure. Gazillions of dollars, basically, water metering on every single use of water with a fee attached to that use of every type of water. And so when asked, well, if you wanted to head down this path, what might that, how long might it take, et cetera, he said, no, 20, 30 years, and here's what you would have to do. And it would include metering everything, et cetera, and having basically almost perfect infrastructure, so there's no water leakage, there's et cetera. And so those of us who would like to get rid of chlorine could come away thinking, all right, we can credibly say being chlorine-free is a great aspiration, let's work toward it. Or you could come away saying, look at the 47 boxes that would have to be ticked, and you'll never get past box 12. So you might as well forget about it and get used to having chlorine. So, but I thought it was a good presentation for laying out what the range of options might be at the end of the day. Everybody, one way, I think, quite stirred one way or the other.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. In considering the issues around that presentation and the various responses to it, it just tells me that we should not let science get in the way of a good emotional argument. We should work diligently to avoid science impinging on how we feel.
A really good note to end a regional council meeting on, isn't it?
Mr. Chair, one of the things that I have advocated for some time by this council is that we become very significant advocates, particularly with our local authority our sister authorities around water use. And we do get fully engaged on their plans, that we're in constant conversations, and I've harped on about this before, that is an area we can make substantial changes to the way in which our local authority infrastructure is configured. And Tom referred to the presentation given by Mr. Graham, where clearly infrastructure does impact vastly on water use. We ought, for example, to be advocates for purple pipes, and if you don't know what that is, you might want to Google it. And it's about reusing our water, for example, wastewater and stormwater, storing it and feeding it back into the system, back to the households to be used either in the garden or washing the car, etc. So they're the sorts of future thinking that needs to be brought to bear in the use of water. And I think it's incumbent on this council in its role to play an active part with that and with the local authorities in that regard. So hopefully we can take on board better water use and our advocacy roles more significantly into the future.
Thank you, Neil. So do we have a mover to receive this report?
I'll move.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Peter. All those just to speak? No, you don't. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Well, we have minor items not on the agenda. We only have one carbon footprint. Was that you, Tom?
Yeah, just a quick question for maybe some follow-up in the next few days. James, in response to a question at the last meeting, you gave a real quick answer to where we stood with respect to work underway to measure our own carbon footprint here at the Regional Council. Could you update us somehow, or a piece of paper or something as to where that stands, or when it gets completed, or
Look, I've just had an email this afternoon from Stacey on the latest on that, and I can either speak to it now, or I can just forward the update to all councillors, whichever is your preference.
Forward the email.
Forward it.
Forward it. Fine.
Thank you. Well, okay, that's the end of our general meeting.
Chair?
Yes.
One thing I think is missing after the thing is the chairman's report.
Oh, normally Debbie has.
I see she was failing her duty here, but
failing her duty.
She was in for 4 years.
I was looking forward to Peter's last, actually, before we came.
Well, I'll tell you what. How about I do a chairman's report for the next meeting? Wind up the year. Wind up the year.
All right, I look forward to it.
Okay. I'll spend a couple of days doing that.
Chair, with your indulgence, Leanne just pointed out it may be in the public might have an interest in what we are doing in the carbon footprint, so perhaps if I just speak just for just very, very quickly on what we are doing.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good idea.
So, look, we are now actively tracking and reporting in the organisational performance report, which is coming through to Council, our energy, fuel use and air travel. On air travel, we have joined Air New Zealand's Fly Neutral program, and we're offsetting all of our air travel emissions, but we recognise that offsetting's not an ultimate solution, so we've also got some work underway to improve our video conferencing and our internal management of flight bookings to drive down, to the extent we can, staff usage of air travel, both in terms of costs and emissions. With respect to fuel usage, we are just at the present time installing 3 new additional charging stations here at Dalton Street as our electric vehicle fleet increases, and we have procured 1 or 2 more in the last month or so. We're continuing obviously to grow that, but we're still stuck with our 4x4 utes issue. I think, as was reported by Chris in the Works Group report, we're currently looking at buying electric side-by-side vehicles for on-farm usage to replace the quad bikes. With respect to wastes, there's an active program across council. For example, all of our milk now is coming in refillable glass bottles, and we've reduced plastic bottles by 1,000 per year already. And we've got an organic waste program with a worm farm, what have you, and we're driving down office consumables further in that regard. In terms of the energy used in this building, we've had a very active program trying to reduce that, and I actually don't have the figures in front of me, but it was reported in the last organisational report. But year on year, I don't know whether anybody remembers exactly what it was. It was a pretty significant
I think
reduction.
for the month of June, it was down. It was reduced by 33% to the prior year.
I'm sorry.
For the month of June, the use was reduced by 33% on prior year. I'm not sure what it has been subsequent months, but.
So we've got a very active program across the organisation, and I understand that Jess and Stacey are going down to the Kapiti District Council in November to visit them, because they are the leading local authority in New Zealand with respect to managing these issues. They've been at it for a long time, and I think they have platinum standard under the Enviromark program that we intend to join, and so we certainly want to try to emulate their performance. So we'll be trying to understand everything that they've done across their organisation for additional ideas that we can add to our current suite of program.
Do you wish to add to the
Just if I could, very briefly, just to ask the Chief Executive
Where's this for standing orders?
if there is
It shows a moral decline.
Moral decline.
Moral decline.
Get quiet,
He
calm.
finds morals
Order.
Carry on, Neil, just ignore.
Are there free bus passes for staff? And are there, have you considered the idea of a pickup service, mapping where staff live and driving around both Napier City and here and saying, you know,
Been a long day, Neil.
So there is some encouragement of ride sharing, and with respect to those staff that have council vehicles, there is encouragement in our vehicle policy for them to pick up other staff that might be en route. We have trialled and now made permanent a staff subsidy for use of the buses. And I think from memory we're a dollar fare for staff, and we've had a significant increase in staff usage of buses.
That Tom's idea, was it?
I think it might have been Anne Redgrove's idea to do that.
He's didn't pick that up.
I've got an organic dairy cow for the kitchen chair that's going to help. And the reason it's organic, I can't catch the bastard to drench it. So.
Is that the B&Z one?
Okay, righto. That's the end of our meeting. Thank you very much. We're going to go now into public excluded. Someone move us in, please.
Before you make the move, could I note that for the public, what we're talking about is how we're going to handle IPO proceeds, which is a lot of public interest in. I understand why we're having a discussion in public excluded, but the decision we're going to make about this, presumably, including how we will manage decision-making around this money, I think is of high public interest, and I would ask that we can announce the result of our decision at the end of the meeting.
Well, that'll be decision. It'll be decision. What we announce will be decision by council during the meeting. But could I make another point? I understand we're going to invite Councillor Bevan to say a few words.
Yeah, at the end.
I just think before we, because if we go to public excluded, everything is shut down. Then we come and reawaken the system again. I just think it'd be better for you to afford Councillor Bevan the opportunity to say a few words now, and then we go into public excluded.
It's a very
yes.
Public excluded first, and then come back out.
Well, it takes 2 minutes to do this. Public excluded.
No.
Why not?
Just for continuity's sake, I just thought it was a sensible thing. But over to you.
Hi.
All important chair.
Okay, no, we are going to do Peter Bevan right now, right? And then we'll go into public.
Let's do Peter Bevan. Let's do Peter Bevan right now.
So we're not going to go into long Churchillian speeches from everyone, but I'm sure everyone wants to say a few words, Peter, because you've been such a stalwart of this council for the last 6 years. You've done an enormous amount of work. A lot of it unheralded really, and certainly unpaid, like the coastal work that you did. But putting that aside, you've been a great councillor. You know, even today you showed your particular skills at going through the fine tuning and picking up little details that not even Rick picks up, which is, you know, saying something. So
He would have. If he turned the light
he
on.
would have long enough. And you've done amazing work, like nationally recognised work on the coastal hazards. As discussions, I'm trying to find a way to try and keep you involved, even if you're going to be living in the far north on a hill, I noticed, by the coast on a hill. But also your work in Tank. You know, you were very much grounded in that process because you came off the land in Heratonga. You know, you were really a Heratonga boy. You know, your dad was a plumber, so you really come from, but like me, really, you were really grounded in this little region of ours. And your contribution to Tank was huge, along with Tom, the two councillors who went to every single meeting. So I really appreciated that. And you had a very close connection to Tānata Whenua. Peter was part of your family as your dad's apprentices, Peter Paku. So you were, and you were a Karamu boy. Head prefect will forgive you for that. But you know, you really were grounded in our region, and it showed. It really showed. And on HBRIC, you, along with me, we were the unpaid members of HBRIC whilst we did the port. And I notice now they're now saying for extraordinary circumstances you might get paid, but I'm sorry you missed that one. A bit late. And because that was a huge amount of work that the HBRIC directors had to put in on the port, and you know, you're a large part to it being successful. So Hawke's Bay owes you a debt, not just for the coastal hazards, not just for Tank and not just for the port, but for your contribution to the council as a whole. And we are really going to miss you. So that's my words. Anyone else want to say a quick word?
I suggest you go down the line.
Okay, Alan?
Yes, well, I'm aware of Peter's particularly good work in spheres that have not particularly attracted my attention, but I've always felt that it's been in good hands, and he's done good work, and he's been one of the hardest working councillors, no question about that. So well done. We'll miss you, Peter. Probably won't miss me, but
Debbie, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I have enjoyed working with you over the last, well, it's been longer than 6 years, but I'd like to acknowledge your commitment to the Ruataniwha process in the early days, and your willingness to engage in that process. And I know there was a time when you crossed the floor, so certainly on behalf of the community, we were very grateful from Central Hawke's Bay for that. But Peter, I would just like to wish you, and you know, endorsing everything Rex has said, but wish you very well with your future. And Christine too.
Thanks, Jerry. Paul?
Thank you, Peter. The last 3 years has been watching you do your work, especially around the way that you've managed the Coastal Hazards Committee, was a real education for me. And I'd like to thank you for the manner in which you conducted yourself there. I thought that was something that I would hope to aspire to be like, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. And your wicked sense of humour, which doesn't come through very often, but is there.
Rick?
I'd also like, I just thought, reflecting on Peter Bevan, this councillor, several words pop into my head. Thoughtful. You're always thoughtful, Peter. You never came and said anything that wasn't thoughtful. The next word was representative. People are supposed to turn up here and be representative, and you always were a representative. You carried that function really well. When you work in a group, you need to work well, and I always found you to be very collegial, so I thought that you were great on that. I always found you to be very able, well-read, and I just thought also you brought a sense of humour. And can I say to you, Peter Bevan, you'll be missed. You certainly will. I felt on a number of occasions, you look around for people who say things, and if they're happy, you know you should be happy. If they're upset, you know you should be upset. And every meeting needs like a miner's canary. Canary's agitated, then you got something to do. And I
to wear my yellow tie.
I thought you were fantastic on that. When you were relaxed about something, I knew I could be relaxed. You know, I thought you were really good, a good thermometer of where things were. Wish you all the best for your fishing. And I would note to say that you promised us to bring fish, but we haven't seen them yet. So you have to come back and bring some fish. All these snap you're going to catch. Thank you, Rick. Benton?
Oh, very briefly, when my uncle turned 70, he made the family turn up and read what his eulogy would look like. And that's what this is sort of sounding like today. So I have nothing to add. It's all been said, Chair, and this is sort of one of the reasons why in the end of the last 3 trienniums I fought tooth and nail that there wasn't any speeches as people were exiting. But obviously I'm behind the times, so I'm learning as I go.
Well, that's insightful, behind the times. Can help you in other ways too, Fintan.
As you said, Rex, I mean, I have 3 observations, I guess, but the first one is based on what you said, that Peter has totally over-delivered as a councillor. I mean, when you look at all the roles that he has played in various ways, H-Brick, the coastal thing, I mean, the amount of time that has gone into the role has been fantastic, and what's the quality of that time? Well, I mean, when you watch people respond to Peter's management of meetings, like in the coastal thing, the mana that he carries with other councillors, the other councils, his mastery of the issues to a depth where, you know, if you want to take them on, you really have to know what you're talking about. But in that fractious group, I mean, including all the public participants in it, I think everybody, it moved along because of the respect that people grew to have over time for Peter and his impartiality, his thoroughness, fairness as a leader of that process. And the last thing, more personally, I've always envied Peter's ability to say in more temperate terms what I feel.
Could help you this morning.
Sometimes he's not.
And so often after I've gone off the deep end, you know, Peter then speaks up, and he has a much more better boiled down and much more reasonable sounding. And I think, boy, I wish I had said it that way. So as a voice of temperateness, I would have a lot to learn still from Peter and the way he handles himself in our discussions. And I just hope you're happy fishing.
Neil?
Well, I won't add too much more, Peter, but to say it's been a pleasure working alongside you for the past term. It's been a real pleasure. We all, the words Rick used was representative, and we all bring to the table a smidgen of representation from different sectors of the community, and you certainly brought your passion for much better land use issues around using our world-class soils in a better way, and I appreciate the passion you brought to that. The other thing too that I want to
say nothing about white baiting.
And white baiting, of course. So representative of those institutions. The other representation, and I'm seeing that I'm feeling you out on this, that tie. What are you going to do with that when you?
I'm going to give it to you.
Go with your shirt.
I might actually put a bid in for that. It's an heirloom, and it should go alongside the train and the.
Thank you, Neil. Mike?
Most of you won't know that Peter was actually one of the top squash players in Hawke's Bay in his prime. And I went to Hastings Squash Club, I can't remember how long ago, 10, 15 years ago, and Peter had actually finished. And they talked about this Peter Bevan with real reverence in the club. And you got a club, 60-70% were Māori, you see, so I just presumed he was a Māori. And so 6 or so years ago when he came in here and I saw he was a white man, I was really quite disappointed. But, I did a little survey of my own of what I thought of the councillors the other day, and you were right up there in the top lot.
Right. And first off with you, James, before we turn to Peter.
Well, there were a bunch of things that I was hoping to say which have all been said, but on behalf of staff of the organisation, Peter, I want to thank you for the particularly professional and constructive way that you have worked with many staff on particular projects. I know that across the organisation people have enjoyed working with you. The fact that you are particularly thorough and a man of detail is always an indication that that you take your job seriously, and you read your papers, and you certainly put the effort in, and that's very much appreciated by the people that do all the hard work drafting those papers, even if you pick us up on errors which we haven't spotted. So just a really big thank you from the organisation and from me personally. More than any other councillor, you have consistently expressed interest and concern in my well-being, and that's been particularly important for me over the last couple of years. So I'm very grateful for your personal support. And I do have something for you from the organisation for you to take north and remember your time with the council. So,
Well done. That's very nice.
Thank you.
What is it?
Foursquare.
Oh, very nice.
Right, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And that's a bit embarrassing actually to sit here and all of you being forced to say some nice things.
I forced them.
And I hope you don't have to go through it for the other two departing councillors. But thank you for all your kind words, and I haven't prepared a speech. I don't make Churchillian speeches, and I'm certainly not going to make one about myself. Thank you for your camaraderie as fellow councillors. We've certainly been through the mill over the past 3 or 6 years. Been lots of interesting issues that we've had to grapple with, and I do appreciate the way that we've gone about doing our business around this table. So thank you for your integrity and honesty through those processes. And I need to extend that to the staff. I've really enjoyed working with all of the staff in this organisation. The staff's grown over the years, of course, and the issues that we've had to grapple with have become probably more complex in lots of ways. And I take my hat off to you as staff, because you've maintained your integrity as staff. You've turned up to work with the right attitude, the right mindset to get on with the work that you're tasked with doing and support the community. And that it's not always stated, but it is always appreciated by us councillors. So thank you for that. You always, after 6 years sitting around this table, you always look back at what's happened and what you've been involved in and what you've managed to get done and what you haven't got done. And I think probably everybody walks away with regrets, and I've probably got two. One is that I would have liked to have nailed the coastal hazards funding model much better than it is, and I'm leaving those people sitting around this table with a bit of a hospital pass in many ways to try and get that sorted, but it does have to be sorted. We all know it has to be. And there will be a way forward, so we'll find it, or you'll find it. And the other one is HBUDs, which is was mentioned by Neil. It's a real bugbear of mine to see what we've done as a community during my lifetime growing up in Hawke's Bay, to the elite soils that we've been privileged to live on, and how poorly we've protected them in almost every way you can think of. And it continues to happen. 3,400 hectares in my lifetime have disappeared under roads and houses, and that's not a sustainable future. And we all know Hawke's Bay's got to go up, not out. But nobody's doing it. And you look at the stats on the new builds and you think of the ease with which greenfields developments can happen, and it's no wonder it happens, and there's never any shortage of willing sellers because they can get much more for their properties, of course, for housing estates than they can for orchards or other uses of that land. So we've got a real problem there, and it's been a deep disappointment to me that HPUDs hasn't even met, only once actually, in the time that I was put on it. They offered me the chair. I wish to hell I'd taken it because more things would have happened, believe me. But I felt that because I was having a crack at the TLAs, I wasn't the right person to chair that joint committee, and so I declined the invitation I had, which I now subsequently regret. So I wish you all well in the future. I know you all come to this table with the right mindset. I wish you good luck in the election, and please don't be a stranger. You've all got my phone number, and I look forward to seeing one or more of you up north at some point in time. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
I might turn up with one day.
Okay, we have one more item of business we've got to get through, guys. So we need someone to move us into...
I move we go into public excluded.
Thank you. And Paul, you second that? Or Alan,
Yeah,
second
okay.
that? All those in favour? Aye. Against? We move to public excluded.